This is our fourth video on functions. We're just going to keep on writing more for practice. So this one is going to be called LetterGrade. We're going to pass in a number in the range from 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The numbers are used to compute grade point averages. And we return a string for A, B, C, D, or F. So let's make this static. String. It's called LetterGrade. We're going to pass in, we'll call this points. So I want to look at the points and return A, B, C, D, or F. And we can use a switch statement here. We could use an if, but this is made for a switch statement. It makes it a lot easier to read. So a switch statement has curly brackets, and the body is going to be case 0. And what this means is, in the case where points has the value 0, return an F. And then on the next line, back up, in the case where it's a 1, return a D. Case where it's a 2, I got to slow down. Return a C. In the case where it's a 3, return a B. And in the case where it's a 4, return an A. Now, theoretically, we should only get those values. But it's possible that something other than that could be passed in, and that is what the default option on a case instruction is for. So default, return, and we'll return something that's clearly not a letter grade, and we'll return an X. Now, when this was not yet completed, I'm going to comment it out and show you what it looked like. I was getting an error message, okay, and it said not all code paths return a value. So what's that mean? Well, it means that the compiler is figuring out what if it is not a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4. If it's something else, then we're not going to return any one of these values. So you always have to have like basically a default value that will be returned, at least if you're doing a function here, and that will make the compiler happy because now it knows that even if it's not a 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, we will still have something returned. Okay, so that's the basic format of the switch instruction. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. If you want to do something other than return, it's just a little bit more complicated, but we'll worry about that some other time. So I want to test this, and I'm going to test it with for int points equals 0, points is less than 5, semicolon, points plus plus. So this will test all values. And I'm going to do console right line, and then I'm going to stick points in here, and the word is, and then I'm going to call LetterGrade for passing points. Okay, so let's run that. We should get this loop executed 5 times with a 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's do less than or equal to 5, and that'll give us an opportunity to get an X back at the end as well. Let's go ahead and run it now. So 0 is F, 1 is D, 2 is C, 3 is B, 4 is A, and 5 is X, which means it's a bad value. Okay, we're going to write some functions, some more functions now that are a little bit more interesting. Well, some of them are. First one's pretty simple. We're going to write a function called miles per hour. We're going to pass in miles, and we're going to pass in hours. And I have some code already written for this, so I'm going to copy and paste it. This is from the notes, by the way. So I have a double called miles, one called hours, And I asked the user how many miles, so instead of just typing in constants all the time, we'll let the user decide. And we're going to read what they type in on the line. It should be a number. If it's not a number, by the way, this instruction will blow up. But if they type in a number, we'll convert it to a double and store it in the variable miles so we can have a fraction of number of miles. And we ask them how many hours, and this can also be a fraction. We're going to convert that to a double. And then we're going to pass, we're going to call miles per hour. And this is another version of write line. This little bit of code right here is called a formatting string. And what we're saying is that we want the argument number 0, which is this one here, to be displayed as a floating point with 1 decimal place. And I think what I need here is a comma instead of a plus. So I think there was a mistake in the notes. And I'm going to write this with a lowercase m. And now let's go down here and write our miles per hour function. So static is always the first word, and it's going to return a double. And the name of it is miles per hour. And we're going to pass in a double called miles, and we're going to pass in a double called hours. And we're getting the red wavy underline here because there is no return instruction. If you pause the mouse, it says not all code paths return a value, where there are no code paths at all, so we're not returning anything no matter what. What I want to return is, this one's just a one-liner. Miles per hour is miles divided by hours. Okay. So let's go ahead and run that. It's going to ask me for the input this time. So let's say I went 100 miles. And it took me 2 hours, then I went 50 miles per hour. Okay. We're going to write another function called inches to centimeters. So we're going to pass in the number of inches, and we're going to return the number of centimeters. So static, this will be a double as well, because we can do fractions of an inch or fractions of a centimeter. And inches to centimeters, we're going to pass in a double called inches. And the formula for converting inches into centimeters is simply multiply by 2.54. So return inches times 2.54. That gets rid of my red wavy line here. I do need some code, though, to test it, though. So let's take this. I'm copying some code from the notes here. I'm going to paste it in. So I asked the user how many inches, and they convert that into a double. And then this is my string here. It's got some formatting information. This is for argument 0, which is the first one to follow the formatting string. And this one is for, and it means format it with 1 decimal place as a floating point. And this one is argument number 1, the value that gets returned. And we're going to format argument number 1 as a floating point with 1 decimal place. Okay, and I need to change that to lowercase. And now everything appears to be good. So let's go ahead and run it. And it's still asking me for miles. Let's do 200 this time, and we'll do 3 hours, so I should get 67 or 66.7. And how many inches? Let's do 10 inches, and 10 inches would be 25.4 centimeters. And we're up around 9 minutes, so we'll stop there, and we will continue with another video on functions.